We said no more of these earmarks, but the GOP has control of the House and the Senate and the White House, and they know how much we look forward to those turtle tunnels, and they were supposed to vote on bringing earmarks back today. But then you heard about it, and Paul Ryan said, oh, well, we're not going to vote on that right now. Oh, that's good. The guy who actually spearheaded the effort to stop it in the first place is also one of the senior advisors, one of the big guys behind the Convention of States. He says we're really only one state away from making this a reality. Tom Coburn joins us right now. Welcome, former Oklahoma Senator Tom Coburn, to the Glen Beck program. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Glenn.
When you saw the GOP yesterday starting to go and put earmarks back in as a way to direct pork barrel spending back into their districts, what went through your mind?
Oh, careerism, career politicians. It's important people not understand how earmarks work. Earmarks work because a city wants something, which is really not in the enumerated powers of the federal government to do in the first place. They hire a lobbyist, or somebody hires a lobbyist. They give to your campaign, and then they ask for, well, the city needs this. You'll look good at home. This has got to be a priority for you because you represent these people. So it's the old idea that people are, as soon as you know you can get anything you want from the federal government, you lose your freedom. And so this arrogance of power that says I will supply what my district needs rather than what's in the best interest of the country, which is their oath, has nothing to do with their local district, which is their oath, is the thing that will spell disaster for a country, and it has already. The career politicians will tell you we need this to get things through Congress. We agrees with the skids. So you have to buy somebody's vote by giving them money to spend at home. Number two is if we eliminated all earmarks, which we still haven't, even though they say they have. If you eliminated all earmarks, actually Congress could start doing their job. The other thing you hear from members of Congress is, well, the administration has the power to do this. No, all you have to do is put in your appropriation bills that they won't do any of this stuff without getting approval from Congress. But they won't do that. So, it's laziness, it's careerism, it's elitism, and it's contemptuous in terms of even having a vote on it tells you that they're totally not connected with the American people and that they're connected with the next election.
Former U.S. Senator Dr. Tom Coburn. Tom, when you're looking at what's happening now, I heard Paul Ryan, who was not for Donald Trump, now ecstatic and he said yesterday that this is a new dawn in America, and the Republicans it's a new day for even the Republican Party. And it sounded pretty excited. A lot of people are really excited. Is this something that you would look on and say, man, it would be great to be in the Senate right now? Or are you expecting more of the same? What do we expect what do you think is happening with the Republican Party?
I don't think much. I'm hopeful that the president-elect can give the leadership to cause people to make hard decisions instead of easy ones for their reelection. But I don't know that anything happened on the 8th of November to do spinal transplants in most of the career politicians in Washington. What the earmarks vote is cowardice. It's about me and not about our country. That's and to me it is so disappointing. And first of all, are they tone deaf? Did they not hear what this election was all about? Draining the swamp?
I don't think anybody did. I really don't. I don't think the media.
I don't think tells you why we have to have a convention of states to offer amendments to limit the scope, the power, and the jurisdiction of the federal government. Here you have the party that's in control wanting to vote to restore one of the most corrupt systems there ever was that only really benefits the politician. Because for any earmark I might have gotten, I had to give an earmark to 99 other senators, and I had to look the other way to be able to do it. And I never got an earmark once for Oklahoma or my district. I refused to do that. I refused to fall into that. So, to me, it's the corruption of careerism. And when I'm talking corruption, I'm talking about not upholding your oath to the U.S. Constitution to understand that there are enumerated powers for the federal government, and those powers are supposed to be limited. There's no reason for a member of Congress or a U.S. senator to be directing money to be spent in their state. What they should be doing is lessening the tax burden and let the states figure out where they want to spend the money.
So you're looking at the Convention of States, and do you believe that the Trump presidency has made this more likely or less likely to happen?
Well, I don't know, Glenn. I don't think it's less likely because you just saw, here's the greatest example in the world why we need it. Here's the supposed fiscal conservatives now want to reintroduce earmarks. So I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is if, in fact, there's not big change over the next 2 years in the behavior in Washington and liberty is lost again and money is spent that we don't have, that we're borrowing from future generations, the election in 2 years from now is going to be very difficult for those in charge.
Tom, I look at the situation. We had a story out of Australia today and one 2 days ago out of India where Citibank is doing what India just did, and they're limiting cash, and they're getting rid of the $10 bill in India. Citibank announced yesterday or tomorrow that in Australia, many of their banks will be entirely cashless. And the world seems to be going to a cashless society because, quote, it's good for business and good for the banks and security. I just have this fear as we start going down this road, all this stuff is going to collapse, and the people are not going to go for another bailout. The banks have already worked it out with the government to have a bail-in. Things can radically change quickly. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think they can. The question is how do you prevent that? And the way you prevent it is you start right now with a new president and a new Congress not spending money that you don't have on things that you don't need. And so whether they manipulate whether we have a currency or not, that's a symptom of the underlying problem. Right now, Glenn, the unfunded liabilities for America is $144 trillion. It grew by $4 trillion last year. That's $1 million per taxpayer. That's $24 trillion more than the entire worth of the country. So when people say there's no problem, we can borrow money, you can borrow money as long as people are willing to loan it to you. But history shows us that both democracies and republics that borrow money at a rate greater than their GDP fail. And so has every other republic before us failed? Yes. Will we fail? Yes. If, in fact, we don't have real, courageous, moral leadership.
Well, we don't have that.
You don't spend the future's money.
We don't have that, so that's why the project of states is so important. The Convention of States is so important. The Constitution gives us a way out. I am a full-fledged backer of this. I think this is the answer. There's a lot of Republicans, at least here in Texas, that say, oh, it's not bad enough to use, Article 5. I don't know what they would be waiting for, but there's a lot of people that are, the business as usual people don't want this to happen. We are now in a situation where we're one state away from making this happen.
Well, there was a report, and maybe you know this fact, Senator, but there were one state away from having enough Republicans in control of legislatures that if they all passed it, you could do it essentially without any Democrats stopping it.
Right, but it really is a bipartisan thing. It's not.
Yes.
We have a lot of Democrats supporting what we're doing.
Right.
I think that here's the main.
And you have a lot of Republicans that are sticking the muds.
Well, but again, that's what a grassroots movement's all about.
Right.
Changing
right.
that.
Right.
So here's the point. You have this example right after election November 8th that the status quo elite careerists in Washington all of a sudden want to bring back a tool of corruption. So they're tone deaf. So the only tool America has that's big enough to fix the problem that we have is an Article 5 Convention of Amendments, where amendments are made that brings power back to the states, that limits the stupidity that's going on in Washington today. Remember, every year, $500 billion is thrown out the window in Washington. Total waste, total duplication, total fraud. That's $500 billion a year. Well, had we had really strong members of Congress, I don't care what party they're from, that took their oath seriously, we wouldn't have that. We'd have $500 billion more a year that we wouldn't be taxed for, or we wouldn't be borrowing against for our kids. So the only tool we have is an Article 5 Convention of States, and the American people have to know that here's the greatest example you can see. Here's the tone deafness, the elitism, the careerism. We want to enhance our own personal power by using earmarks to look good at home, to collect money for campaigns, to enhance our future as a career politician. I mean, listen, Mitch McConnell, first thing he said after the president-elect said about term limits, he said, we're not bringing term limits up. No, he's not going to bring term limits up. He's been there 30 years. Why would he bring term limits up? And he's part of the problem.
So the people who say that, well, especially now, the Democrats are freaking out, and they would love to open up that Constitution.
Well, they don't have the power to do that. An Article 5 convention, by law and Supreme Court precedent, has only the power to discuss what's in its application. So Convention of States has an application for the financial aspects of the federal government, i.e. a balanced budget amendment using generally accepted accounting principles. Number 2, term limits on members of Congress and appointed members of the government. And number 3, limiting the scope, power, and jurisdiction of the federal government. So there's only 3 areas, so you can't open it up. And it's not a constitutional convention. It's a convention for amendments to the Constitution that we have.
Right, but we couldn't do what they did, in the last progressive era, and I'm not suggesting anybody wants to do this, but you couldn't come in and say, I want prohibition.
No, you couldn't do any of that because it doesn't have anything to do. You can only have a meeting by precedent, by history, and by common sense what is listed in your application, and all the applications have to match. So there's no risk whatsoever, zero, nada, of a, quote, runaway convention, and there never has been one.
I don't think you can make that point.
People against this always use, we'll probably use some of it right. Well, that's the elitist, power-hungry group that wants to continue things the way it is, that have us bankrupt as a nation. Look at median family income. Median family income dropped $7,000 under this president.
Wow.
That means 50% of the people are making $7,000 in real dollars less a year than they were before he became president.
But it's also a lot of frightened conservatives, Senator, because they are worried that which is why you can't make the application point enough, because they're worried that they're going to try to eliminate the Second Amendment.
Well, here's the thing they ought to worry about. We have a runaway federal government right now. Why don't you worry about that? Rather than the people that are promoting the fear, they lack courage. There is no fear in doing the right thing. There's a lot of fear hunkering down, saying, "Oh, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid," and consequently we go down the tubes. So you get a choice. You can either stand up and fight for your liberty and fight for your rights and fight for a limited federal government like was intended, or you can continue to let the federal government control 70% of everything in our economy and in our states.
I can't recommend highly enough that you get involved with the Convention of States project. I think this is the answer. This is the way to give the power back to the people. This is what we've been looking for, and time is of the essence.
You agree Washington is dysfunctional?
Oh, yeah, but it doesn't matter which party's in charge. I spent 10 years up here in the Senate and left early because I don't see a solution in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. Congress to fix what's wrong with our country.
Founders gave us a great solution, Neil. They gave us what's called an Article 5 Convention of the States. The federal government didn't create the states created the federal government. And by the way, you're spending our future of our kids and our present day income, and we think it ought to change.